Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm excited to talk to Daryl Marez about the Coven of the Elder Blossom, their newest book. Welcome, Daryl.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. What a wonderful, fantastical read. And when I say fantastical, it's a bit of fantasy.
Mhm.
But it is really quite lovely.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. I haven't had much feedback outside of like my circle of friends and family. So I am so excited to get into this chat because I know that you've gone through the book and I just want to hear like your favorite parts. We can talk about it, get into it. So if you're not wanting spoilers, I wouldn't say avoid this one, but just be aware that we are going to get into it.
That's right, because there are some things that happen that are, when you read the book, you'd be like, of course, I recognize this and I recognize that. But I think that it fits in perfectly. So give the audience an overview of what this book is about.
Well, Coven of the Elder Blossom takes place like right before spring hits in 1969, and it follows the story of Jamie Raleigh, and they just lost their job. They're coming into their own, they're having a change of identity, and through it all, they just started having these visions. Like they'll just be going about their day, and all of a sudden they're struck. And it's just quick pictures. They can't move throughout the scene and it's all leading up to a day where rent is due. They don't have it and they need to start thinking outside of the box because their Brooklyn neighborhood just isn't cutting it anymore. So they venture out to Greenwich Village and that's where they find Blossom Books. They meet the owner Celia, and as soon as they get there, everything begins to fall into place. They begin to recognize their visions. They begin to find confidence in themselves. And then through Celia, Coven of the Elder Blossom is an actual thing. It's not just a title. It begins to reveal themselves, and through it, you meet the members. So you meet Flynn and Finian, you meet Siobhan, you meet Rosa, and they begin to just experience life together. And then through it all, the MDU, the Magical Detection Unit, begins to encroach on their space. And all of this is happening on the background of the gay liberation movement. So all the Coven is going and hanging out at the Stonewall. They're going to Washington Square Park. They're heading down through like downtown area. So they're all over the city while also like carving out these magical portions of the city for themselves. And I don't know what else to say before getting like story specific.
No, I think that's a perfect description.
Mhm.
I think for a lot of queers, I know this one especially, going to New York was like going to magic land for me.
Mhm.
Having grown up in a small rural village in the South. So going to New York was like going to magic land. Sometimes I would go to New York and I'd be overwhelmed just because of its vastness and its fast pace. And that's one of the things that Jamie has heard growing up, having lived out on Long Island. The village is crazy and all of this stuff. And yet Jamie finds it to be quite magical.
Mhm.
And so this book is definitely about found family and about finding your way home to whatever that home is. So what about that experience sparked something in you to write?
Every one of these characters I gave a piece of myself to. So Jamie was probably like the best representation of myself at that age. Like I had family. Did I really have a closeness to them? Not so much. So the relationship that Jamie has with their father, you just kind of have them as a voice over the phone. That's very much how my relationship was. Like we did see each other, we did get along. There was formalities and niceties, but was there the depth that you got with a conversation with Celia? It wasn't equatable. So there's like I said, a piece of me in all of these characters, but it was nice to explore um like the what could have been, what I would like to have happened, and what was. And there was magic in that. Just like you said, in New York, there's magic in all of these places, but there's also magic in the space that you make. And being a queer person, we have to make these spaces for ourselves, whether that's a gay bar, a drag club, a little secret sanctuary in the corner of a bookstore. All of these places are important, and I feel that's where we can really thrive.
I totally agree with you, and I think that Jamie's visions, and once they get to the Blossom bookstore, there's something about that. Is that instant recognizable of I'm home, or at
Mhm.
least this is familiar. And I think more than anything else, Jamie is seen for the
Mhm.
person they are, not something mirrored in someone's eyes like the lifelong friend Nancy, and I use friend very
No.
loosely. But I think we all have had our fair share of Nancys in our life who, no matter what we do, it's never quite exactly what they would hope we would do. And so
Mhm.
that inclusion of Nancy was so realistic. And I like the fact that even though Nancy's not a positive influence for Jamie, Jamie is still accepting, and I like that part.
Going into this story, I knew I had certain beats I wanted to hit, but I also had ideas of what I wanted to happen, and once I started writing, all of that went out the window. So originally, Jamie and Nancy and Sutton were supposed to be this group of normal friends, and then they were going to be brushed off and pushed aside more and more as Jamie got deeper in with the coven. But as I got into it, and as you know, you meet Nancy in chapter one, Nancy popped up out of nowhere, and that just went out the window, and she just turned into a monster. So she was no longer this close bonded friend, but she did have the history of being that friend. And so that's what I did keep. But Jamie, once they stepped into Blossom Books, this is the first time that they're counted on, that their opinion is respected, that they have a voice, and that they're not just treated as somebody who's just been there because they've been there. And so I feel that's where Jamie started getting like the stepping stones. And not only were they getting trained in magic, but they were also getting trained and mentored in just everyday life. Like these conversations are conversations I said, like, I wish I had or I've had with other people. A lot of what was said in the book, I feel, is very timely for what's going on right now. And even though it's been like 56 years since Stonewall, like some of the things, like even Alistair the ghost butler, I feel like could resonate right now. And so like I'm typing this and I'm like, when does a novel just turn into journaling? Because that's what we're doing right here.
Daryl, you bring up a point that I certainly have made a note about. It's so this is a historical. Technically, I
Mm-hmm.
think anything before 1971 is considered a historical. I believe that's the year of cutoff currently. No matter what the year is, it's considered a historical, but it is frighteningly so
Mm-hmm.
similar and eerie to what's going on in today's world. There's
Mm-hmm.
just for all of the strides that we've made, and we certainly have made a lot of strides since Stonewall and those early uprisings, we're still facing some of the same kind of bigotry we faced 56 years ago. And in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of ways, this constant threatening to take something away from us, history repeats itself. One day, some of these people who are trying to be oppressive today may find some of us rising up and saying, "Not today, Satan. I just don't think that's going to happen today." So,
Mm-hmm. It not only does history repeat itself, it often rhymes. And so it may not look exactly the way it did then, but the fundamentals are there. These queer spaces that we thrive in are getting taken away. You go onto the Stonewall National Monument site through the Parks Department, and it's a little scary what has happened and what they've hacked away. But it's through these stories, it's through us, it's through elders of this community that we hold these stories close. It wasn't until my first big pride when I was 20. I went to West Hollywood Pride for my first time. And that's where I actually heard Stonewall for the first time. I thought it was a hotel because they kept calling it the Stonewall Inn, and I was like, no, no room at the inn. What is this story? And then you get the quick digestible Marsha P. Johnson through the first brick, and then you dive deeper. And so once that spark was lit, I started doing that. I started digging deeper, looking into it, learning all that I could. I don't know everything. And the sad thing is, none of us will ever know everything because the history, it's not always written down. It's passed on. There's a documentary of P.S. Please burn this after reading. And it's just all of our history, our pictures, our closetedness is that's where it stayed, and we weren't able to always share that. And so I feel Coven of the Elder Blossom, the historical side of that. One of my favorite parts is when they go to Stonewall the first time and you kind of get walked through that procedure of knocking on the door and it's sliding open and you have to say, hey, I've been here already and I can vouch for these people. They're cool. And then you literally go in and you sign a guest book and it's just pseudonyms. It's just all of these random names. And so I chose a few Easter eggs, a few of my favorite names that I wanted to put in there. But they really had no register. They had drink tickets. It was illegal for them to be selling alcohol. So that was a way to circumvent it. They weren't selling alcohol, they were selling tickets. And so the Stonewall was really dirty, really grimy, had a bad sound system, and people enjoyed it because that's all that they could get at the time. Like people are begging for scraps, and this was life, and they were
Well,
happy with it.
it was, and it was connection. And when you're starving for connection, you will
Mhm.
overlook the grime and the nastiness or what have you, because you need that human touch. You need that human interaction. I remember even in the 80s, because used to you could get film developed at most every drugstore, but
Mhm.
they routinely looked at the pictures they were developing, and if anything was offensive, they'd pick up the phone and call the police department in a heartbeat. I mean, we're talking about just someone's everyday photos. If it offended someone, they
Mhm.
would try to get them labeled as indecent or obscene or whatever. And it's like, wow, we've come a long ways, but we still have a lot we're fighting with. So um you've taken on a little route, and I'm not asking. This is a generalization. So
Mhm.
you're younger than I am. That's a given fact. But you're also not what I would consider old. So you've taken on a bit of almost an elder statesman's voice. Are you comfortable with that? And I mean that as a compliment, not as any kind of derision.
Well, thank you. um, I I feel that these stories need to be told and they need to be held on to, and no matter what age. So this book is a new adult, so it is meant for people of Jamie's age. But as you can see in the story, they're in their early 20s, and Celia, the twins, they're like in their 30s, 40s. We have Siobhan, she was up there in age. And so I want to see the generational, like the interaction. And so I if you can walk away talking about a little bit about the Stonewall at 22 and you can tell people about that, then why not? Or if you can get a little deeper into it and talk about how the lesbians were saving people out at Fire Island during the HIV pandemic, then you can talk about that too.
Well,
So
absolutely, and that's sort of my pat on the back to you, because I mean you're walking the walk and you're talking the talk. And I mean,
mhm,
we do have a very rich and varied history. Some not so good. Most of it is, at least to me, we've definitely made a difference. Certainly in the last 50 or 60 years, we still have a long ways to go to get true equality. But I think that I agree with you. I think that telling these stories, and you've taken some things in New York's history and in queer history in this country, and you've woven it in seamlessly to your book. And I think that that is yet another thing that brings it to life, because taking alongside of Stonewall and the first gay liberation parade, I think these are things that are make it even more real, if I might say so.
I wanted to put it in a piece of reality, but where I added the magic was kind of a way of a safety net for myself because I didn't want to put words into people's mouths. I didn't want to speak for Sylvia Rivera. I didn't want to speak for Marsha P. Johnson. There was a movie, I think it was 2015, about Stonewall, and it was very whitewashed. I only got about halfway through it, and I did not want to be that gay. I did not want to be that person. I did not want to take somebody else's story and like mold it. So I wanted to interact with it in a way. I didn't want to take my magic and throw it all over the place with a swish of a wand and boom, the magic people saved Stonewall. So there was a fine line of weaving in and out of actual history. So I'm glad to hear that you liked it and that it paid
I
off.
did. I did.
Um,
Well, and I agree with you. I think that we have a service to do to those who came before us, and we have a
mhm,
service to do to those who come after us, and that is to tell the truth. But yet, as you say, I don't want to hijack someone's story. I don't want.
mhm,
I would hate to make a documentary where I had to whitewash history. I don't like that. I mean, I think we've done a great, fabulous job of doing that in this country with just regular, everyday history. I keep learning things that I'm like, how old am I going to have to be before I realize that almost everything I learned in history might have been a lie? I'll
mhm,
give you an example. So I did a half marathon in Reno, Nevada about 6 or 7 years ago. And on the drive up to Reno, we passed, two friends went with me, we passed Manzanar.
mhm,
Until 7 years ago, I didn't even know what a Manzanar was. I'd never heard of it. I didn't know we had, for lack of a better term, concentration or internment camps in this country. I didn't know we had
mhm.
seven of them and that we interred 125,000 Americans out of fear and prejudice. And I'm like, wow, that's something we didn't learn growing up. So I think if we don't tell our own history, someone else will happily tell it for us and it'll be whitewashed.
Mhm. Growing up in Lassen County, which is not too far outside of Reno, you definitely learn some things. You also learn how people are able to remember things a certain way, and that's how it is going forward. So you can apply that to any piece of history, even with our queer history. Doing research into this book, I'm finding that, like I said, there's pieces of history that get shortened and become more digestible, like Marsha P. Johnson throwing the first brick at Stonewall. In my research, there's interviews with her saying, "Oh, honey, I didn't even get there till 3 a.m." Like after everything kicked off. And so while the trans community and the gay community, they came together, the sex workers, they came together, different groups came together, and Marsha P. Johnson did lead the charge every other day. So she does deserve her flowers. There are other people that I mention in the book, Stormy Delavine, um, just people who I want to drop the tidbit and let you go ahead and dig a little deeper and let not me put the story down your throat because we were here to talk about the coven.
Right.
hmm
Which I also think, so one of the things that you were able to do was, in my mind, was to take a coven or representation of a coven, and
hmm
it almost became our story as well because you frame it against Stonewall and the first Gay Liberation Day and parade. You give us a frame of reference, but yet we also believe, well, as we grow older and we learn more about ourselves, we really understand that we're magical people.
hmm
All people are magical people if they choose to tap into their own magic. So I'm not saying gay people are better than anyone else. I'm just saying that all humans possess a magical quality to them as long as they engage in it. And I sort of
hmm
felt like I was right along with the coven. I wanted to be a member. I wanted to engage. I wanted to lock into my magicalness that I possess. And that I think was something that every reader will be able to root for.
Well, one of the things is with all of the witches in the coven, they each have their own individual powers, and then they come together, and that's where they feed off of the elder blossom that gives them additional power. So it's not the flower that just gives them their magic. They all have their own magic. Just like there's a quote for Finn and Flinian are talking to each other, and they say like, what is it? It's gay and magical, there's a distinction. And so it's very much, you do have your own power within you. I feel as a reader, you are celebrated somewhere in the book. I wanted to make a large cast. There's a lot of characters in the book. Like sometimes there's 8 people talking in a scene.
Oh, yes, I have to make notes because I can't remember everyone's name without notes.
And so I gave birth to many, 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 many children in this book. And I want people to see themselves in some character, good, bad, or otherwise. And so the cast is very diverse. They have many different backgrounds, they have many different backstories. And in all of them, you learn different aspects of themselves or why they are the way they are. And I'm just going to take this time right now. Chapter 14. I am so sorry for writing chapter 14. Oh my goodness. That is probably the most heart-wrenching book or chapter in the book. It is the halfway point, and I just had to do something with it.
Well, you got to prop the tent up at the halfway point because
Mm-hmm.
you want something to keep somebody wanting to go to the second half. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way good writers do. So, outside of Jamie, who was your favorite character to write? Whose head did you enjoy being in the most?
Um, I I want to say Celia because I feel everybody wants to be like Celia. Like Celia's the strong, determined one. She's the strength. I would say like Rose is like the brute force, so she is the strength, but but Celia is like the emotional strength. But I would say like if we're hanging out like day to day, I would probably say I'm more like Flynn. So like I have that like the things that aggravate me. I let other forms of art do the talking for me. So he loves to dance. I love to dance. So I would like the movement and the music speak for me. But I would say out of like the most fun to write is probably Alistair
Okay.
because I was able to like look up like the old words, use like turns of phrase. Like one of my favorite things is when he's talking about Sutton and he calls him like a bespectacled stool pigeon in a cardigan. So
Yeah.
like just reads, but like the a roundabout way of doing
Yes.
it.
You think that Alistair should snap his fingers after every one of those
Oh yeah.
proclamations. So,
And then he
uh,
just poofs, just
yeah, right.
no comment.
And then when he's done, he just disappears. I love that.
hmm
So that was a
hmm
lot of fun. Well, Daryl, I tell you, what a wonderful job you've done. Again, let's see if I can pull up the book cover. Oh, well, I should never say I'm going to do something. The Coven of the Elder Blossom. It is absolutely wonderful. I hope you the best of success. And you want to do a little spoiler for book number 2?
I
Or at
will
least
do a spoiler. In fact, I will actually do a series spoiler. So, book number 2 is it's going to fast forward a few years, and we're going to be following the Coven. Well, some of the characters from the Coven and introducing some new ones. We're going to be following them down to the south. They're going to be heading down into the bayou, into New Orleans, into all of that hoodoo voodoo goodness. And I'm excited to introduce some new culture. We found out that there is a coven in Harlem, and we are going to dig more into that side of the story. But as the overarching theme for this series is each book, there's going to be 4 total. Each book is going to be following a different part of the gay liberation movement. So if you know your history, they're going to be heading there, and it's going to be 1974. And so we're going to be dealing with lots of laws, lots of demonstration, the activism in the coven, especially the twins, is going to be tested. Um, then if we're going to do a little bit more of a spoiler, we're going to be going into book 3 is going to be like a San Francisco, and then book 4 we're going back into New York during the AIDS crisis. So we're going to be doing lots of fun things. Excited to be introducing some like voguing when we get into book 4. I haven't really seen that written. So it's definitely of the time period, very Paris is burning and all of that. But these are the things I want to teach while also mixing in magic along the way.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, I look forward to all of them. This one is absolutely fantastic and can be read as a standalone, just so
Mhm.
I'm clear with the audience. So, best of luck, Daryl.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a blast, and I'm glad you checked out the book and you loved it. So
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at outwithdan.com, on Twitter at outwithdan, and on Instagram and Facebook at Go Out with Dan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.